The morning light in Seattle always felt muted, as if the sun hesitated to fully emerge from behind the eternal veil of clouds. Ethan Caldwell stood in the bedroom he shared with his wife, folding the last of Maddie's blouses with quiet precision. It was a small ritual he'd taken on in recent years, not because she needed help packing, but because it made him feel useful, connected, involved in her endlessly moving life. Maddie's world spun fast. Meetings, campaigns, red-eye flights, corporate dinners. Ethan often felt like he was watching her through a glass window, close enough to see her silhouette, but too far to reach her. She was in the bathroom now, doing her makeup, humming softly to a pop song he didn't recognize. The melody felt cheerful, oblivious to the heaviness in his chest. Ethan opened the outer pouch of her suitcase, checking that the travel documents were in place. Under a stack of marketing briefs, something plastic shifted. He lifted the papers and froze. A foil strip. Familiar. Impossible. Birth control pills. For a heartbeat, the room shrank around him. His ears rang. His fingers trembled so violently that the strip slipped from his hand and hit the carpet with a dull sound. He stared at it as if it were a live grenade. "Ethan?" Maddie's voice floated from the bathroom. He couldn't answer. His throat locked. Birth control pills. His mind tried to make sense of it, flipping through every rational explanation, every excuse. But there was nothing. No logic. No reason. Not when he, Ethan Caldwell, was medically, unequivocally infertile. He had accepted the diagnosis years ago. Slowly, painfully. He had even apologized for it countless times, though Maddie had told him never to. "We'll figure things out," she had said, stroking his back in that gentle, rehearsed way. There are so many ways to be a family. But this little strip of pills screamed a truth that shattered all those comforting words. The humming stopped. He heard her footsteps. "Hey, did you see my—" She appeared in the doorway, foundation half-blended, lipstick in hand. Her eyes followed his, down to the floor, and widened just a fraction. So small a reaction, but he caught it. Of course he did. "Oh," she breathed too lightly. "Those are old. I must have forgotten they were in there." Ethan swallowed. His voice scraped raw. "Old?" "Yeah," she said, shrugging, reaching down too quickly to pick them up. "Leftover from before. You know. Before they learned he was infertile. Before their marriage began to quietly die. Before she started taking trips twice a month." He watched her slip the strip into the inside pocket of her handbag, almost as if securing a weapon. "You don't need them," he whispered, without meaning to. Maddie froze for a millisecond, barely a stiffening of her shoulders, but it was enough to make Ethan's heart fracture. "I mean," he added, quickly, "we're not trying, so maybe—" "That's why I forgot they were there," she cut in. "Ethan, please, don't make this a thing." The dismissal hit him harder than shouting would have. He stepped back, nodding mechanically. Sure, not a thing. But something inside him had already begun to unravel. A slow, quiet tear along the seams of trust that had already grown thin. After Maddie left for work, Ethan remained seated at the edge of the bed, staring at the still open suitcase. The sheets beside him smelled faintly of her perfume. Floral, soft, expensive. He closed his eyes, letting the scent wrap around him like a memory. He thought of their early years together, movie nights on thrift store furniture, shared coffees, whispered plans of adopting one day. They had been happy. Not perfect, but real. When had it shifted? He remembered arguments disguised as discussions, the exhaustion in her eyes, her increasing irritation at his quiet nature. "You're too passive, Ethan," she had said once. "I feel like I'm dragging the marriage alone." He had tried harder after that, cooking more dinners, planning small getaways, being supportive during her stressful campaigns, but nothing seemed enough. And now, pills. A cold dread trickled through him, settling in his stomach like lead. He reached for his phone. A simple instinct, a search for reassurance, for proof that he was overreacting. But instead, the screen lit up with something else. A notification banner from their shared mobile carrier account. Usage summary for last month available. Click to view. He opened it without thinking. The details loaded. Call logs, text logs. He skimmed, not expecting anything. Then he froze again. Maddie had exchanged 2:14 text messages with a number he didn't recognize. At hours past midnight. During business trips. During weekends, she claimed to be catching up on reports. His chest constricted. He clicked the number. No name saved. He typed it into Google. Nothing. But a moment later, as if the universe wanted to crush him quickly, a LinkedIn suggestion popped up beneath the search bar. People also search for Adrian Blake, Creative Director, Northstone Media Group. Adrian, Northstone, Maddie's biggest client, the company she traveled with. Ethan felt his pulse slam against his ribs. The air thinned. He wasn't imagining anything. He wasn't paranoid. The pills were not a mistake. Something was wrong. Deeply, unmistakably wrong. And the worst part was the quiet certainty settling over him. He'd always known. Just never wanted to believe it. That night, he couldn't sleep. Maddie's suitcase sat zipped near the door, waiting for the morning taxi. She had kissed him goodnight like always. A soft, practiced brush of lips. Nothing more. At 3:12 a.m., Ethan sat alone by the dim kitchen light, scrolling through the flight schedules, the hotel Maddie had booked, the conference she claimed she was attending. A numb, cold decision rooted itself in him. He was going to follow her, not to confront, not yet. He just needed the truth, the full, brutal truth, even if it destroyed him. The flight from Seattle to Chicago was 4 hours and 12 minutes, but Ethan barely felt any of it. Time blurred into a dull, colorless stretch, like a film reel stripped of its soundtrack. He sat rigidly in seat 17A, hands clasped so tightly on his lap the knuckles whitened. He didn't read, didn't watch the in-flight movie, didn't sleep. He simply stared at the clouds outside the window and imagined the moment Maddie would see him, the moment she would know he had followed her, a moment he desperately didn't want, yet couldn't avoid forever, because truth required witnesses. And tonight, the witness would be him. O'Hare Airport greeted him with the usual chorus of rolling luggage, soft announcements, and an endless stream of travelers rushing toward places they believed mattered. Ethan moved through them quietly, a single ripple in a churning river. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to track his own wife. He wasn't supposed to feel this kind of pain, the kind that lived in silence, beneath the ribs, where it could fester unnoticed. He checked the hotel address Maddie was staying at, the Crescent Harbor, a boutique corporate hotel near the river. He hailed a cab, his voice hoarse from lack of use. "Crescent Harbor, please." The driver nodded and pulled away from the curb. As the city rose around him, the glass towers, the winter gray sky, the reflective river slicing between districts, Ethan felt an odd sense of detachment, like this wasn't his life at all, like he was watching another man drive toward the unraveling of his marriage. When the cab stopped, he paid, stepped out, and stood still for a long moment. The hotel's entrance glowed with warm golden light. Inside, he knew Maddie had checked in an hour earlier. He pulled out his phone and opened their carrier account again. 3 texts exchanged with the unknown number in the last hour. She was awake, talking to him, not to her husband. Ethan inhaled sharply, as if bracing against a blow, then walked into the hotel, but not toward the front desk. He didn't need to get a room under his name and risk being seen. He walked past the lobby, pretending to be on a call, then slipped into the adjoining cafe. From there, he had a clear view of the elevator bank. He waited. 10 minutes, 20, 30. The clock on the wall ticked in a steady, metallic rhythm that grated against his nerves. Then, movement. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and two figures emerged. Maddie, and a man beside her. Tall, dark-haired, dressed in a fitted charcoal coat. His posture relaxed, confident. He reached out to adjust the strap of her bag. An intimate, familiar gesture Maddie didn't resist. Adrian Blake. He had the kind of confidence that came with being desired. By clients, by coworkers, by anyone who crossed his orbit. Ethan's stomach dropped. There it was, the truth. Not written in messages or hidden in luggage, but living, breathing, walking beside her. Maddie laughed at something Adrian said. A soft, unguarded laugh Ethan hadn't heard directed at him in months, maybe years. His throat burned. Adrian touched her lower back as they walked toward the exit, his hand resting for a second too long to be professional. And Maddie didn't move away. Ethan forced himself to remain seated, fists buried in his jacket pockets. If he stood up now, if their eyes met, the fragile restraint holding him together would shatter. He waited until they stepped outside and hailed a car. Maddie climbed in first. Adrian followed. The door closed. The car pulled away. Ethan rose from his seat, the world tilting for a second as nausea washed over him. He gripped the table edge to steady himself. Then he followed. Not closely. Not enough to draw suspicion. Just enough to keep them in sight. The car drove toward River North, one of Chicago's trendiest districts. Restaurants with warm Edison bulbs, rooftop bars, clients exchanging handshakes over cocktails. The vehicle stopped near a high-end restaurant. Ethan watched from across the street as Maddie and Adrian stepped out together. Adrian placed a hand on her waist again as they walked inside. It wasn't the gesture itself that broke Ethan. It was the way Maddie leaned into it. Subtly, naturally, as if her body had become his without resistance. Ethan's vision blurred. He blinked rapidly, forcing the world back into focus. He moved to the restaurant window, staying in the shadows. Through the glass, he watched them sit at a corner booth. Maddie brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Adrian leaned closer, their heads tilted in. Too close, too familiar, too comfortable. In the reflections on the glass, Ethan saw himself. A ghost outside their warmth, a spectator to his own marriage dissolving. They weren't discussing work. He could see it in their eyes. This wasn't business. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding waiting to be cleared. This was intimacy. Soft, lived in, repeated. His chest tightened until breathing felt like lifting stones. He stayed until their entrees arrived. Until Maddie laughed again. Her hand briefly touching Adrian's wrist. Until Adrian leaned in, whispering something that made her cheeks flush. The kind of glow she never had with Ethan anymore. He stepped back from the window, unable to bear another second. The cold wind cut against his face as he walked away. He didn't know where he was going. Somewhere, anywhere that wasn't here. 2 blocks away, he leaned against a brick wall, burying his face in his hands. For the first time in years, Ethan cried. Not loudly, not messily, but quietly. Like a man trying not to fall apart in public. Like someone mourning, something that had already died long before he noticed the body. He wiped his face with shaky fingers. From here on, nothing would be the same. He had proof. He had seen enough to end the marriage. But endings were never simple. Not when love and betrayal lived in the same heart. And as he stood there, Chicago lights reflecting in his wet eyes, one question burned through him. When had Maddie stopped being his wife and become someone else entirely? Seattle welcomed Ethan back with a thin drizzle, the kind that left a cold sheen on everything it touched. As he stepped out of the taxi in front of their townhouse, he felt older than he had just 24 hours earlier, as if Chicago had carved away something vital inside him. The house was quiet. Too quiet. A quiet that didn't comfort. A quiet that accused. He unlocked the door and entered, the soft click echoing through the living room. Maddie wasn't home yet. Her trip wouldn't end until tomorrow evening. The thought should have brought him relief, but instead it made the walls feel tighter around him. He toed off his shoes, the sound flat against the hardwood floor, and set his bag by the stairs. He didn't turn on the lights. Darkness felt honest tonight. In the living room, the large framed photo from their second anniversary hung above the fireplace. Maddie in a red dress, Ethan in a suit slightly too big. She had leaned into him, smiling brightly. He had looked at her like she was the only thing that made sense. He approached the photo and studied it. It didn't feel like looking at memories anymore. It felt like watching strangers play roles he once believed were real. His fingers touched the glass. "When did you stop loving me?" he whispered to the empty room. The silence answered for her. It said, "A long time ago." He brewed coffee, not because he wanted it, but because the ritual forced him to move, to exist. The machine hummed to life, filling the kitchen with a faint warmth. The kitchen, the same place where Maddie used to steal bites of raw cookie dough, where they once slow danced at midnight for no reason, where arguments later replaced laughter, where words cut deeper because they were whispered. He sat at the table, cradling the mug between his palms, letting the heat seep into his cold hands. For a long time he didn't think. He just breathed. But thoughts eventually seeped in. Small at first, then heavier. He pictured her in Chicago, maybe still at dinner with Adrian, maybe already in his hotel room. The image tightened something around his lungs. He had proof now. But proof didn't dull the pain. It deepened it, made it sharper. Ethan opened his laptop. Not to snoop further. He couldn't bear to see more. He opened his emails, stared at his inbox, and couldn't process a single word from work. He closed it again. Instead, he clicked on a folder he rarely touched anymore. Vacations. Years of photos, smiles, warm sunsets, hands intertwined, moments that once felt genuine. He clicked through them out of compulsion, but each image felt like another knife. There was a picture of them at Yosemite. Maddie laughing, hair messy from the wind, his arm awkwardly around her. She'd kissed his cheek after that photo. He could still feel the warmth if he closed his eyes. Back then, he believed that was the start of their forever. But forever was fragile, and it had slipped through his fingers without noise. As night deepened, Ethan moved to the couch and curled beneath a blanket. Sleep barely brushed him. A restless half-doze, interrupted by flashes of Maddie and Adrian together. At 2:07 a.m., his phone buzzed. A message from Maddie. "Maddie, landed in Chicago. Long flight. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? I'm exhausted." He stared at the screen, the lie so effortless it almost impressed him. He didn't reply. His silence was the truest thing between them now. He placed the phone face down and closed his eyes, trying to breathe through the ache in his ribs. Eventually, exhaustion won over, pulling him into an uneasy sleep. He woke up late, the sky outside turning a soft gray blue. His head throbbed. The emotional kind of headache, the kind that came from holding too much pain inside for too long. He made breakfast automatically. Eggs, toast, black coffee. He barely ate. At noon, he opened his laptop again. But instead of work, he typed a short message to his boss. "I need 2 personal days. Urgent. Will explain later." He pressed send before he could overthink it. Then his eyes drifted around the house, the living room, the family photo wall, the stack of unopened mail near the entryway. For the first time since he'd returned, he felt the weight of reality settling over everything. This was still his home, but it no longer felt like it belonged to him. He walked upstairs to the bedroom, opening Maddie's dresser drawers. He wasn't searching for more proof. He had enough. He was searching for signs of the woman he loved. Perfume bottles, silk scarves, stacks of business cards, jewelry boxes he had gifted her. They all looked like her. None of them felt like her. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head bowed. Finally, the truth he'd avoided for years came into full, painful clarity. He had been alone in this marriage long before Chicago. At dusk, his phone buzzed again. Maddie, how's your day? Everything okay? He stared at the message until it blurred. She didn't know. She didn't know he had followed her. She didn't know he had seen. She didn't know he had returned with a truth she could no longer hide. For a moment, he almost typed a response. Something normal. Something that would maintain the fragile illusion. But then his thumb hovered over the keyboard, and he locked the phone instead. He needed one thing before the confrontation. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. He needed to decide what he wanted, not what pain demanded, not what betrayal fueled, but what Ethan Caldwell, as a man, could live with. He lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, as quiet resolve slowly replaced the turmoil. Tomorrow evening, when Maddie walked through that door, everything would change, one way or another. Maddie's flight landed at 6:42 p.m. Ethan knew because he had checked the airport schedule 3 times, even though he hated how obsessive it made him feel. By the time the key turned in the front door, the house was dim, lit only by the soft gold of a single lamp in the living room. Ethan sat on the couch, spine straight, hands folded, as if preparing for a formal interview rather than a conversation that would end his life as he knew it. The door opened. A rush of cold air swept in. Then her silhouette appeared, small, graceful, familiar in shape, but foreign in presence. Maddie exhaled as she stepped inside, her luggage wheels bumping softly against the threshold. She brushed back her hair, pulled off her scarf, then froze when she saw him. "Oh," she said lightly, "you're home early." Her voice was casual, too casual, a voice that belonged to someone with secrets tucked neatly away. Ethan studied her, really studied her, the slight flush on her cheeks, the trace of a new perfume, the small smile lines that faded quickly when she realized he wasn't smiling back. "Yeah," he replied quietly. "I got back last night." She blinked. Confusion crossed her face. "Last night? I thought you... Wait, did something happen in Portland?" Portland. The lie she believed he had lived. He didn't answer the question. He simply watched her set down her bag, the same bag he'd seen propped against Adrian's leg in the hotel lobby. Maddie forced a smile, stepping closer. "Well, you look exhausted. Want me to heat something up? I'm starving. The airport food was... I saw you." 2 words, soft, deliberate, words that shifted the ground beneath both of them. Maddie's breath halted. Slowly, she turned to face him. "What? What do you mean?" Ethan looked at her the way someone looks at a painting they've finally realized is a forgery. "I was in Chicago." The color drained from her face so quickly it almost startled him. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her chest lifted in a sharp inhale, like someone trying not to drown. You followed me?" she whispered. "No," he said calmly. "I went because I had to know. I needed the truth, Maddie. Not guesses, not excuses." Silence, the kind that feels like a cliff edge. Maddie's hands tightened around the handle of her luggage. Her eyes darted to the floor, then to the wall, then to him. Everywhere except into the truth. "What exactly did you see?" she asked, her voice trembling in a way she tried to hide. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You and Adrian, the hotel, dinner, the way you leaned into him, the way he touched you, the way you smiled." Her shoulders collapsed slightly. Shame, real, unmistakable shame, shimmered across her expression before she hid it behind a practiced composure. "Maddie," he said softly, "I'm infertile." Her eyes snapped up. He continued, voice breaking around the edges. "So tell me, why were you taking birth control pills?" The question cut through the room like glass. Maddie pressed a hand over her mouth, eyes glistening. I can explain." "You can try," Ethan replied, "but understand something. I'm not asking because I want you to fix this. I'm asking because I need to hear the truth from your mouth before I decide what to do next." Tears gathered, but she blinked them back, just like she always did when trying to stay composed. Maddie wasn't the type to crumble easily. She took a long, trembling breath, then another, and when she finally spoke, her voice was small. "It started last year." Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe. "I didn't plan it. I didn't go looking for it. But Adrian, he noticed me. He listened. He said things that reminded me of the woman I used to be. It wasn't supposed to become anything." "So what did it become?" Ethan asked, voice steady despite the weight inside him. Maddie closed her eyes. "A mistake," she whispered, "but also a place where I felt alive again. And I hate myself for saying that." Ethan felt something inside him fracture, something beyond anger, beyond sorrow, something closer to grief. Not grief for her, but grief for the version of himself who believed they were still a team. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "Did you ever plan to leave me?" "No," she whispered again. I didn't want to lose you." Ethan laughed then, a quiet, disbelieving sound. "You didn't want to lose me, but you were already gone." Maddie winced, as if the words physically struck her. She took a step forward. "Ethan, please. I know I broke something deep, but I still love you. I never stopped." He stood, and for the first time since he'd known her, Maddie looked afraid. "Love?" Ethan said softly. "You say you love me, but you protected your affair more carefully than you protected our marriage." Maddie swallowed hard. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I want a chance to explain everything, to try, to repair what I can." Ethan's voice was a whisper. "I don't know if there's anything left to repair." She reached for him, but he stepped back. The smallest movement, yet it broke her. Her hand fell to her side. She stared at him with wide, fractured eyes, eyes that finally reflected the reality she'd refused to face. "Where do we go from here?" she whispered. Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady, haunted, exhausted. "I don't know," he said. "But tomorrow, we'll talk, not tonight." "Might I sleep here?" she asked quietly. "This is..." "Still your home," he replied, but his tone made one thing clear. It wasn't theirs anymore. Maddie nodded, wiped her cheeks with her sleeve, and quietly pulled her suitcase upstairs. Ethan remained in the living room, listening to her footsteps disappear down the hall. He waited until he heard the bedroom door click shut. Only then did he let himself sit again, heart heavy, chest tight, soul aching with the silent truth. Sometimes betrayal wasn't loud. Sometimes it was the quiet shift in a home where two people slept under the same roof but no longer shared the same life. The drive to the coast felt like moving through a tunnel of static. Ethan's hand stayed fixed at 10 and 2, knuckles pale, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. The Pacific shimmered on his left like a blade. Every exit sign, every passing billboard felt unreal, like the world had quietly continued while his had been ripped open. Clara's text sat unread on his lock screen. "Don't wait up. Long day tomorrow." The message was from that morning. It stung now, more than it should have. He replayed it. Clara laughing on the phone with Amanda. Clara taking birth control. Clara crying in the shower. The cold, hollow distance between their bodies for months. And now, the address she wrote in her planner. Not her usual hotel. Not the agency's corporate partner. A boutique place by the water. Romantic, discreet, intimate. Exactly the kind of place where people go to not be found. The hotel Ethan pulled into the gravel lot and sat motionless for a full minute. The hotel was small, modern, with warm amber lights glowing through floor-to-ceiling windows. Waves crashed somewhere behind it, muffled but relentless. His heart hammered in a strange rhythm. Fear, dread, betrayal, denial. What if I'm wrong? What if I destroy everything over a misunderstanding? What if I'm right, and everything is already destroyed? He finally stepped out of the car. Inside, the lobby was quiet except for a soft jazz track humming beneath the sound of the ocean. A single desk clerk looked up with a hospitable smile. "Good evening, sir. Checking in?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm meeting my wife, Clara Hayes. Could you tell me her room number?" The clerk typed politely. "Let me just... She hasn't checked in yet, but the reservation is active. 1 king room, 4 nights." The words "1 king room" hit him like the punch he'd been waiting for. "Would you like to leave a message for her?" the clerk asked. Ethan forced a breath. No, thank you." He walked back out into the night, the door closing behind him with a soft hiss that made his skin crawl. The parking lot. He stood beside his car, staring out at the dark waves. The air smelled of salt and cold wind. He had never felt so small. He imagined Clara with another man, laughing the way she no longer laughed with him, touching someone the way she no longer touched him, making future plans with someone else, while he was left building theirs alone. A dull ache wrapped around his ribs. He was grateful, strangely, that no one could see him unravel. A car engine approached. Headlights swung into the lot. Ethan froze. A black SUV. Clara owned a black SUV. His stomach flipped. The vehicle pulled in and parked 2 spaces away. The door opened. Clara stepped out. Her hair was tied in a low braid. She wore a navy blazer, heels in one hand, suitcase in the other. Her makeup was faintly smudged from the drive. She looked exhausted, but not sad, not tormented the way he felt, just resolved. She grabbed her phone and typed quickly, then paused, her screen lighting up her face. Ethan's phone buzzed a second later in his pocket. A message from her. "Just arrived. Wi-Fi's bad. Talk tomorrow. Love you." Love you. To him. While she stood in front of a hotel she had no reason to be in, then another door opened on the SUV's passenger side. Ethan's breath caught. Sharp. Cold. A man stepped out. Tall. Well-dressed. Confident. Younger than Ethan, but not by much. He stretched casually, as if this arrival were routine. Clara glanced at him with a look Ethan hadn't seen in months. Something soft, something familiar, almost tender. His vision tunneled. The man said something quietly. Clara smiled. And for the first time, Ethan saw the truth he wasn't ready to hold. Not in speculation, not in suspicion, but in flesh and bone. Clara wasn't alone on this trip. She wasn't even pretending to be. She and the man walked toward the entrance together. Close, too close. And Ethan stayed in the shadows, silent, frozen, unable to breathe. The breaking point. When the door closed behind them, Ethan finally blinked. His legs felt numb. His mind screamed at him to storm inside, demand answers, tear the truth out of her right here. But another part of him, the part that had spent years loving her, protecting her, trying to be enough for her, couldn't move. He leaned against his car and whispered into the night, "Why, Clara?" The ocean answered with waves that kept crashing and crashing as if they too couldn't stop. Ethan didn't remember getting back into his car. He didn't remember turning the engine on, or pulling out of the lot, or driving down the coastal road, with the lights of the hotel shrinking behind him like a wound closing too slowly. All he remembered was the feeling. That cold, metallic sensation spreading through his chest, like his heart had finally realized something his mind had been begging it not to acknowledge. Clara wasn't simply drifting away. She wasn't overwhelmed by work. She wasn't shutting down from stress. She was with someone else, physically, emotionally, intimately. And she had been lying to him with a softness so practiced it almost felt like mercy. Almost. I'd rode back. The highway blurred. Streetlights smeared into gold streaks across the windshield. Ethan gripped the wheel tighter as if losing focus for even a second would make the pain swallow him whole. He tried to rationalize. Maybe it's work. Maybe he's just a coworker. Maybe they carpooled. But the lie collapsed even as he reached for it. The discreet hotel, the king bed, the birth control pills, her distant eyes at home, her sudden girls' trip, her secret calls, and that look, that soft, private smile she gave the man in the parking lot. It was a look she used to give Ethan years ago. He swallowed a sound that was almost a sob. Not quite. Something tighter. How long has this been happening? How many evenings did I wait for her while she was with him? How many times did she come home smelling like a different life? A life he wasn't invited into. Home without her. He reached the driveway without remembering the final half hour of the drive. The house looked different tonight. Wider. Emptier. 4 walls and a roof. No longer a home. Inside, the hallway felt cavernous. Every light too bright. Every shadow too heavy. Clara's scarf hung on the coat rack. Her favorite mug on the counter. Her perfume lingering faintly in the bedroom doorway. The intimacy of her belongings cut deeper than any sharp word could. He walked into their bedroom slowly, like approaching a crime scene. The bed looked untouched. Too big for one person. Too accusing for two. On her side sat a single object she'd forgotten to pack. Her planner. The same planner he'd seen earlier that morning. The one with the hotel's address scribbled neatly. The one she kept close to her like a second phone. He sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. The planner. At first, the pages looked ordinary. Notes, work schedules, client meetings. But then the handwriting changed. Less structured, more fluid, personal. He reached a page titled, "Things to Consider Before Leaving." His breath hitched. Under it, she had written, "Can I rebuild what I've lost with Ethan? Or has something already broken beyond repair? Why do I feel more alive around him? Is it desire or escape? Or both? What kind of woman does that make me? Can I forgive myself?" Ethan pressed the heel of his hand against his forehead. He couldn't tell which hurt more, that she was planning to leave him, or that she hated herself for wanting to. Further down the page, one line stood alone. "I'm afraid he will find out before I'm ready." His throat tightened. He, the other man, not Ethan. She wasn't afraid of hurting Ethan. She was afraid of disrupting whatever she had with the man at the hotel. It wasn't a fling. It wasn't a mistake. It was something she was carefully protecting, even from herself. Another page. "Rules for the trip. Do not slip. No photos together. Separate check-in times. Keep story straight. Amanda, conference, early flight, delete messages every night. Ethan's hands shook. She had planned every detail, every lie, every alibi. Not a moment of it was accidental. This wasn't impulsive betrayal. This was architecture, a betrayal built brick by brick. The body remembers what the mind denies. He closed the planner and sat still until the room stopped spinning. Grief came in waves. First disbelief, then sorrow, then anger trying to claw its way up his throat. But beneath all of it was something quieter, something more devastating. Loss, not just of Clara, but of the future he had built in his mind, of the family he imagined, of the life he thought he was living, a life that, he now realized, had existed only on his side of the marriage. He stood and walked to the bathroom. The mirror caught his reflection. Eyes red, face drawn, shoulders tense. He looked like a man whose world had shifted off its axis. He looked like a man who had been replaced. Slowly, he gripped the edge of the sink. My wife, his voice cracked, was planning a future without me. The truth settled into him like cold iron. The final line in the planner. He returned to the bedroom one last time, unable to resist checking the last page she had written on. And there it was, a sentence that felt like a blade slid beneath the ribs. If Ethan ever finds out, I don't know if he'll break or if he'll finally walk away. She had wondered. But she had never asked him, never given him the truth. Instead, she tested the limits of his silence, his love, his blind trust. And he had failed the test by trusting her completely. Ethan closed the planner. He sat in the dark. And for the first time since the wedding day, he realized Clara no longer belonged to him, not even in memory. The house was silent, but Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay fully clothed on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling as if it might rearrange itself and offer an explanation, a direction, a way out. But the ceiling remained silent, indifferent, just like everything else. His phone vibrated again, for the 10th time. Incoming call, Clara. He didn't answer. The screen lit up in the dark, illuminating the room with a cold, soft glow that made everything look unfamiliar. When the call ended, a message appeared. I'm settled. Are you okay? Haven't heard from you. Call me when you wake up. Love you. He turned the phone face down. Tonight, the word love felt like poison. The sleepless hours. The hours between midnight and dawn stretched like a punishment. Ethan tried to distract himself, stood by the kitchen sink drinking water he didn't want, paced the hallway, opened and closed drawers without purpose. But the planner's words echoed with every movement. Leaving. Someone else. Alive around him. A future without Ethan. Each line lodged under his skin. At 3:17 a.m., he sat on the living room floor, back against the couch, exhausted but unable to rest. His hands trembled, not dramatically, not visibly to anyone but himself, but enough for him to press them together to stop the shaking. He wasn't angry, not yet. Anger required solid ground. He was still falling the partner he never met. The man from the parking lot kept appearing in his thoughts, blurred by distance but painfully clear in presence. The confidence, the easy smile, the way Clara's shoulders relaxed near him, as if her body had grown accustomed to his nearness. It wasn't just passion. It wasn't reckless desperation. It was familiarity, routine, intimacy built over time. Ethan whispered into the dark, "Who are you?" Not expecting an answer, only needing the question to exist outside his mind. He hated that the man had a place in Clara's life that Ethan hadn't noticed. Hated that Clara had shared something, anything, with another person while leaving him lonely in a marriage he thought he was still part of. But what haunted him most was this. The man looked comfortable beside her, which meant Clara had made him comfortable. That unspoken exchange felt like a betrayal heavier than the pills, heavier than the hotel, heavier than the planner. It meant she had given intimacy to someone else long before giving the truth to Ethan. 4:56 a.m. The breaking message. His phone vibrated again. Not a call this time, a text. "Ethan, it's late. Are you asleep?" "I had a weird feeling. Just checking. Please respond." Please respond. He almost laughed. A bitter, breathless sound. Where was her worry when she lied to him? Where was her checking in when she built a separate life? Where was this concern when she bought birth control she knew he didn't need? He didn't reply. A minute later, "Did I do something? Tell me if I did. I don't want us to be off." The irony burned. Off. They weren't off. They were shattered. And she was calling from the arms of the man she had chosen. Ethan set the phone on the coffee table and let silence answer for him. The dawn he didn't want. The sky slowly shifted to a pale, indifferent blue. Morning light crept across the rug, extending toward him like a soft hand. But it offered no comfort. The world was waking up. Ethan wasn't ready to. His head throbbed. His throat burned. His heart felt bruised, literally bruised, as if something inside him had been physically hit and hadn't stopped swelling. The front of the house remained eerily still. A home without her. A life without her. A future he didn't ask for. The memory that cut deepest. At 6:38 a.m., he finally stood and walked toward the bedroom. The air inside felt stale, heavier, as if it held secrets that didn't belong to him. He sat on Clara's side of the bed and opened the planner again, not to torture himself, but because he needed to anchor the reality. He needed proof that this wasn't some cruel nightmare. A loose paper slipped out from the back pocket of the planner, a folded note. Ethan hesitated, then unfolded it. It wasn't addressed to him. It wasn't even meant to be here. It was written in Clara's hand, but the words were meant for someone else. What if he finds out? And below it, in a different handwriting, a man's handwriting. "He won't. You deserve to be happy, Clara." Ethan froze. The man had written to her, reassured her, comforted her. He was part of her decision, part of her secret, part of her heart. A third line, Clara's again. "I don't want to hurt him, but when I'm with you, I breathe." And beneath that, the man's reply, "Then breathe." The page slipped from Ethan's fingers. He felt something inside him crack, softly, quietly, like a hairline fracture spreading through something once whole. This was no longer a question. Clara wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She wasn't searching for clarity. She had already chosen another life, another man, another version of herself. Ethan exhaled shakily. "She already left me," he whispered to the empty room, "and I didn't even know." The sun rose fully then, filling the house with a warm light that felt cruel in its brightness. A new day, a life changed, and a truth he could no longer outrun. Ethan didn't remember standing up. One moment he was staring at the note, the handwriting of a man he'd never met, a man who somehow knew his wife better than he did. And the next moment, he was pacing the bedroom with a quiet desperation, as if movement might stop him from unraveling completely. The sunlight outside was warm, gentle. Inside him, everything felt frozen. There are mornings that change a life. This one ended his. The call. He couldn't avoid. At 8:12 a.m., his phone buzzed again. This time, not a text, a call. He glanced at the screen. Clara Hayes, his wife, his stranger, his betrayal. He stared at the name for a long moment, thumb hovering. He didn't want to hear her voice, didn't want to listen to a mouth that had whispered to another man hours earlier, didn't want the softness she reserved for deceit. But he needed something. Clarity. Words. A crack in the mask she had worn so flawlessly. He answered. "Ethan?" Her voice was soft with morning rasp, intimate, too intimate for what she had done. "God, I was worried. Are you okay? You didn't respond last night." He closed his eyes. "Where are you right now?" he asked, voice low, almost unrecognizable to himself. A pause. Too long. Too careful. "At the conference. Breakfast session," she said lightly. "I told you yesterday." He cut in. "You're lying." Silence spilled into the line like ink. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" He swallowed. "I know where you are." More silence. A shift in her breathing. A tremor. "Ethan, please," she whispered, and for the first time her voice wasn't calculating or evasive. It was afraid. "Tell me what you think you know." He almost laughed. The kind of laugh that breaks instead of amuses. "I saw you last night." A sharp inhale, a tiny, choked sound, then quiet. "I saw the hotel. I saw him. I saw you walk inside together." Clara didn't speak. Not because she didn't have lies ready. She always did. But because the truth between them had finally grown too heavy to dodge. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "Ethan, I'm so sorry." The apology landed like a blade. Not denial, not explanation, just confirmation. A house full of ghosts, he let the silence stretch. Let the weight of it crush the last fragile fibers of hope inside him. Clara whispered, "Please talk to me." "What do you want me to say?" Ethan's voice was steady, but stripped of warmth. "That I understand? That I forgive you? That I'll pretend this never happened?" "Ethan, how long?" How long, Clara?" Her breath hitched. He imagined her in some quiet hotel hallway, holding the phone with trembling hands, searching for words that wouldn't exist. 6 months, she finally murmured. 6 months, half a year, while he made dinners, while he booked weekend trips, while he lay beside her, unaware she was already gone. He pressed his palm against his forehead, fighting a wave of nausea. "And the pills?" he whispered. "Why, Clara, why would you—" Her voice broke entirely. "Because I didn't want to get pregnant with his child. I wasn't thinking. I didn't know how to leave without destroying you." He felt something collapse inside him, quiet but final. The kind of break no one sees, but that never heals the same. The confession she should never have given. Clara whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." "I know." "I wanted a family with you." "I know." "You knew I couldn't give you one." A pause, then, "Yes." "And you still did this." Her voice shook. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was lonely. I felt unseen. I felt like I was disappearing inside our life. He made me feel alive again." Alive, around him, like she wrote in her planner. Ethan closed his eyes, chest tightening. "And I didn't?" he said, barely above a whisper. A long, heart-wrenching silence. Then, softly, brutally, honestly, "I don't know anymore." The pain that sentence delivered was sharp enough to blur the room for him. The last words of a dying marriage. He took a steadying breath. "Come home when your trip ends with Tung," he said. "We'll talk." Clara hesitated. "Ethan, please don't make any decisions yet." He almost smiled. A broken, tired thing. "I'm not making a decision," he said. "The decision was made 6 months ago. I just didn't know." He ended the call gently, not with anger, not with finality, but with a quiet devastation that felt somehow worse. The moment after, the phone slipped from his hand and landed softly on the bed. He sat for a long time without moving, the morning light pouring over him like a spotlight on a man whose life had just been exposed. The house was still, but it didn't feel like his anymore. Not without trust, not without truth, not without her. The version of her that existed before all this. He exhaled slowly, the sound almost a sob. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the death of a future. And somewhere on the coast, in a hotel that shouldn't exist, his wife was packing her lies into a suitcase, knowing she would have to face him soon. Knowing the old life was gone. Knowing the new one would